Welcome to my BNB Glow channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. OMG. Luna turns Will and Electra's wedding into a disaster, and nothing on The Bold and the Beautiful could have prepared fans for the sheer chaos that erupted when the highly anticipated ceremony descended into heartbreak, scandal, and unrelenting drama that will ripple through Los Angeles for months to come, because as the guests gathered at the lavish venue decorated with white orchids, golden drapes, and shimmering chandeliers, everyone expected a fairy tale union that would cement Will and Electra as one of the most glamorous couples in town, but what they got instead was a shocking spectacle orchestrated by Luna, whose presence had been a topic of whispered conversations and nervous glances from the moment she stepped through the grand double doors in a daring crimson gown that screamed trouble. It was as though the universe itself had conspired to unravel every vow, every promise, and every illusion of perfection that this wedding had been built upon, and as the string quartet played softly in the background and Electra glided down the aisle in her breathtaking gown that seemed to glow with ethereal light, the tension in the room was palpable, yet nobody could quite put their finger on why they felt uneasy until Luna made her move, her eyes locked on Will with a mixture of rage, heartbreak, and determination. And the next series of events would ensure that this day would never be remembered for love or devotion but instead for betrayal, humiliation, and the absolute implosion of two families' carefully crafted images. The gasps began when Luna interrupted the officiant mid-sentence, her voice cutting through the ceremony like a dagger as she demanded that the truth be spoken before vows could be exchanged, and while Electra looked confused and Will stiffened with dread, the guests craned their necks in disbelief, unsure whether this was some kind of twisted prank or a real-life scandal unraveling in front of their eyes, but Luna's trembling hands, her defiant posture, and her fiery tone left no room for doubt that she meant every single word she was about to say, and with tears glistening but not yet falling, she dropped the first bombshell, revealing that Will had been entangled in a secret affair that nobody in the room wanted to believe, least of all Electra, who clutched her bouquet so tightly that petals snapped off and drifted to the ground like symbols of innocence lost. And when Luna turned her piercing gaze toward the shocked crowd and declared that the affair had not been with just anyone but with someone very close to Electra, the entire ceremony erupted into a chorus of horrified gasps, whispers, and the rustle of guests standing to get a clearer view, while Will's face drained of all color. Electra staggered back as though physically struck, and Luna, emboldened by the chaos she had ignited, pressed forward with her confession, her words now pouring out with a mix of vindication and agony, as she revealed details so explicit, so damning, that the illusion of love between the bride and groom shattered like fragile glass before everyone's eyes, leaving the room in stunned silence broken only by Electra's guttural cry of betrayal, a sound so raw and painful that it seemed to echo off the walls of the grand hall, reverberating deep into the hearts of all who witnessed the tragedy unfold. And in that moment, the wedding that was supposed to be the pinnacle of glamour turned into a public battlefield where reputations, relationships, and dreams were destroyed beyond repair. The meticulously orchestrated symphony of Will Spencer and Electra Weston's wedding, an event meant to be the crowning jewel of Los Angeles high society and a definitive statement of Forrester Creations' enduring elegance, began not with a dissonant chord but with a single, silent, and utterly malicious smile from a woman cloaked in vengeful grace. Luna Nozawa, who had entered the hall on the arm of her mother, Poppy, a picture of reluctant compliance and simmering resentment, took in the scene, the cathedral of white gardenias and white roses dripping from every archway, the soft, expensive glow of 1,000 candles refracting through crystal glassware, the hushed, anticipatory murmur of the assembled elite, and most of all, the radiant, untouchable joy on the face of her cousin, Electra, who stood bathed in a beam of golden hour light at the end of the aisle, her hand resting on the steady arm of her father. It was a vision of perfection, a tableau of everything Luna felt had been denied to her, everything that had been usurped by Poppy's secrets and the Forresters' casual cruelties, and in that moment, the last fragile thread of her restraint, already frayed by the public humiliation she had endured, snapped. The plan had been a desperate, half-formed thing, born of tears and cheap wine, a fantasy of confrontation she never truly believed she would have the courage to enact. But courage had nothing to do with it now. This was pure, unadulterated ID, a seismic release of pent-up anguish that demanded an audience. She watched as R.J. Forrester, the boy whose blind devotion to his family had made him an unwitting architect of her pain, adjusted his tie nervously at the altar, standing as best man beside a beaming Will, and something within her solidified into cold, hard purpose. The string quartet swelled into a tender rendition of a classic love song, the signal for the bridesmaids to begin their procession, and as the first beautiful woman in dusky rose silk began her measured steps, Luna moved, not towards a seat, but with a terrifyingly calm stride towards the impromptu bar that had been set up for pre-ceremony champagne, her eyes fixed on the bottle of vodka that sat, pristine and full, beside a tower of flutes. Poppy, sensing the shift in her daughter's energy, reached out a hand, her whisper a frantic, "Luna, no, honey, don't, this isn't the way," but it was too late, her fingers grasping only air as Luna seized the bottle with the grim determination of a soldier picking up a weapon. What happened next unfolded not like a sudden explosion, but like a slow-motion avalanche, each moment layering upon the next with a horrific, inevitable gravity. Luna did not yell, she did not scream accusations, that would have been too crude, too easily quashed. Instead, she adopted a mask of tragic vulnerability, her voice a carrying, tremulous whisper that cut through the music like a shard of glass. "A toast," she announced, hoisting the vodka bottle not as a tool of inebriation but as a prop, a symbol of the poison she was about to inject into the proceedings. The quartet faltered, the musicians unsure whether to play through the interruption or stop. All heads turned, a wave of confused murmuring sweeping through the guests. Rich Forrester's brow furrowed in immediate displeasure, while Brooke Logan's hand flew to her chest, her maternal instinct sensing a crisis blooming. "A toast to the happy couple," Luna continued, her gaze locking not on Will or Electra, but on Poppy, who had gone deathly pale. "And a toast to the truth finally being spoken, before God and all these witnesses, so that no more lives are built on a foundation of lies." She took a deliberate swig from the bottle, the liquid courage a bitter burned down her throat, and then she began to speak, her words no longer a whisper but clear, crisp, and damning. She spoke of the night of the Forrester family celebration, the night that had been painted in the press as her own shameful downfall. She described the spiked drink, the disorienting haze, the feeling of her own body and mind being stolen from her. But then, she pivoted, her finger pointing accusatorially at her own mother. "She told you I was irresponsible. She let you all believe I was a foolish girl who couldn't handle her alcohol. She let RJ believe it. She let me believe it." Luna's voice broke with a perfectly timed sob. But it was her. My own mother. She spiked my drink with her special moon tea, her little party trick to loosen everyone up, to make herself the life of the party, without a single thought for what it would do to me. A gasp rippled through the crowd, followed by a deafening silence. Poppy looked as if she had been physically struck, her mouth opening and closing soundlessly, her carefully constructed facade of harmless flirtation crumbling into dust. The confession, hurled into the sacred space of a wedding ceremony, was so bizarre, so sordid, and so utterly unexpected that it robbed everyone of a coherent response. Will and Electra stood frozen at the altar, their joined hands now a clutch of mutual shock rather than romantic promise. RJ's face was a mask of stunned horror, his eyes darting between Luna, whom he still cared for deeply, and Poppy, whom he had trusted. This was no longer a private family scandal, it was a live exhibition, a piece of breathtakingly dramatic theater for every rival, every socialite, every journalist in attendance. Luna, feeding on the chaotic energy, pressed her advantage, her speech becoming more unhinged, lurching from the specific incident to a sweeping indictment of the entire family, accusing them of hypocrisy, of covering for each other, of living in a gilded bubble where they could destroy people like her without consequence. She stumbled slightly, the vodka beginning to mix with her adrenaline, and in her stumbling, she crashed into a towering floral arrangement, sending a cascade of white petals, glass vase, and water crashing across the pristine marble floor, the sound a shocking explosion of violence in the hushed room. This physical destruction acted as a catalyst, breaking the stunned paralysis. Chaos erupted. Eric Forrester, his face etched with concern, called for someone to help Luna. Steffi Forrester, ever pragmatic, tried to usher her away from the center of the room, hissing about dignity and timing. But Luna was a whirling dervish of emotion, shrugging off hands, her voice rising to a hysterical pitch as she now turned her fury directly on Electra. And you? You think you're so perfect. You think you deserve all of this. Your perfect wedding, your perfect life. It's all a lie. Your family is just as messed up as mine, you just have better PR. Tears streamed down Electra's face, her makeup beginning to smear, not from the tears of joy she had expected to cry, but from the humiliation and rage of having her most cherished day annihilated before her very eyes. Will, protective, stepped in front of his bride, his own anger finally surfacing. That's enough, Luna. You need to leave. Now, he commanded, his voice tight with a fury he could barely contain. But the point of no return had been passed. The wedding was irrevocably broken. The sacred atmosphere had been replaced by the buzzing, voyeuristic thrill of a public meltdown. Guests were on their phones, not filming the bride's walk, but capturing Luna's disintegration and Poppy's utter devastation. The gossips were already whispering, their eyes alight with the promise of a story that would dominate the headlines for weeks. The carefully chosen music, the exquisite flowers, the breathtaking dress, all of it was now just a backdrop to a spectacular implosion. As security finally moved in, guided by a frantic Ridge who was signaling violently from the sidelines, Luna did not go quietly. She was a prophet of doom, shouting her final declarations over the shoulder of the large man guiding her away. You see. You all see what they are. Liars. All of them. My whole life is a lie. Her exit was as dramatic as her entrance, leaving behind a silence that was somehow louder and more terrible than her screams. The aftermath was a landscape of ruin. Poppy had collapsed into a chair, sobbing uncontrollably, surrounded by a mix of pitying and disgusted glances. RJ was staring at the ground, his worldview shattered, his heart torn between two versions of the truth. Will held a trembling Electra, who was now openly weeping, her dream day transformed into a waking nightmare. The officiant stood awkwardly at the altar, his book of ceremony closed, unsure if there was even a wedding left to officiate. The disaster was total. It was not merely an interruption, it was a demolition. Luna, in her blind, vodka-fueled rage, had not just raged against the machine of the Forrester family, she had driven a tractor through the very heart of it, leaving behind a tangled wreck of relationships, shattered trust, and a wedding album that would forever be filled with pictures of horrified faces and destroyed floral arrangements instead of happy smiles and loving kisses. The path forward for everyone involved was now shrouded in the acrid smoke of this very public conflagration, and the road to recovery, if it even existed, would be long and painfully hard.